Despite ruling England for more than 3 decades, King Henry is remembered mainly for 2 things: his brutal treatment of his wives, especially when they failed to give him a male heir, and his dramatic break from the Catholic Church. But what truly drove these extraordinary and at times unthinkable actions? The answer lies partly in the past. His father, Henry VII, did not inherit the throne. He seized it by force at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485. The Tudors were little more than ambitious upstarts, and Henry was painfully aware of just how fragile his family's hold on the crown truly was. Determined to secure a lasting legacy and solidify the Tudor dynasty, Henry pursued power, stability, and a male heir with relentless ambition. His obsession with producing a son ultimately drove him to the edge of tyranny. In his mind, no action was too extreme, not even the execution of his own wife. At the time, no woman had ever independently ruled England, and Henry feared that a daughter's claim to the throne would be easily challenged. This deep-rooted anxiety drove him to acts of astonishing cruelty, especially toward his 6 wives, many of whom paid a devastating price simply for being married to the king. There's a familiar rhyme that sums up the fate of King Henry VIII's 6 wives: divorced, beheaded, died; divorced, beheaded, survived. Let's take a closer look at the lives and often untimely deaths of Henry's queens, and the enduring impact this real-life royal melodrama had on England. Henry married his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, the young widow of his older brother Arthur, in June 1509. He was just days from his 18th birthday and had been King of England for less than 9 weeks, but the marriage was not straightforward. According to canon law, marrying a brother's widow was forbidden. However, a papal dispensation was granted in 1504, allowing the union to proceed on the condition that Catherine's first marriage had not been consummated. Catherine firmly maintained that it had not, and the marriage went ahead. Catherine quickly proved herself to be a devoted wife and a capable queen. She was highly educated, fluent in Latin, and well versed in matters of diplomacy. She served as regent in 1513 while Henry campaigned in France, and even played a role in the victory over the Scots at the Battle of Flodden. But despite her many strengths, Catherine struggled in one crucial area: producing a male heir. Over the years, she suffered multiple miscarriages and stillbirths. Only one child, Mary, born in 1516, survived infancy. For Henry, this became a growing concern. Obsessed with securing the Tudor dynasty, he grew increasingly anxious and desperate over the lack of a male successor. By the late 1520s, Henry's desire for a son, combined with his infatuation with Anne Boleyn, led him to seek an annulment of his marriage to Catherine. This pursuit became known as the King's Great Matter. Henry argued that his marriage to Catherine was invalid in the eyes of God, because she had previously been married to his brother, though Catherine firmly insisted that her first marriage had never been consummated. Henry claimed his conscience was burdened, and that their failure to produce a male heir was divine punishment. But the Pope refused to grant the annulment Henry so desperately wanted. Faced with this roadblock, Henry took matters into his own hands. He severed England's centuries-old ties with the Roman Catholic Church, and declared himself supreme head of the Church of England, a bold move that placed royal authority above papal power. With his new religious autonomy, Henry appointed a loyal supporter, Thomas Cranmer, as Archbishop of Canterbury. Cranmer quickly declared Henry's marriage to Catherine null and void. Their daughter Mary was stripped of her title as princess, and officially declared illegitimate. That same year, Henry married Anne Boleyn, Catherine's former lady-in-waiting, with whom he had fallen passionately in love. Banished from court and forced into isolation, Catherine remained steadfast. She refused to recognise the annulment and continued to defend her title as queen. For years, Henry had been captivated by the charismatic Anne Boleyn. He pursued her with a relentless devotion, showering her with lavish gifts and letters filled with longing. But Anne was no ordinary courtier. She refused to become his mistress. Only after Henry promised marriage did she agree to be with him. When Anne became pregnant, securing the Tudor line became urgent. The two were married in secret in early 1533. Not long afterward, Catherine, now living apart from court, received devastating news. Her marriage was declared invalid, and Anne Boleyn took her place as queen. Catherine died just 3 years later, having never accepted the annulment or relinquished her title. Henry's hopes for a son with Anne were quickly dashed. In September of that year, Anne gave birth to a daughter, Princess Elizabeth. Henry had been so certain the child would be a boy, that the birth announcement had already been printed with the word prince, which had to be hastily corrected to princess. Anne would go on to become pregnant twice more, but tragically both pregnancies ended in miscarriage or stillbirth. With each loss, Henry's disappointment deepened, and Anne's position grew increasingly precarious. It was the beginning of the end. On the morning of May 2nd, 1536, Anne Boleyn was arrested and taken to the Tower of London. She was charged with witchcraft, adultery, and even incest, accusations that shocked both the court and the nation. Though the charges against her were based on flimsy evidence, if any at all, it did not stop Henry from condemning her. On May 19th, 1536, Anne Boleyn was beheaded, her once glorious rise ending in tragedy. But Henry had already moved on. Even before Anne's execution, he had set his sights on Jane Seymour, another lady-in-waiting. Just one day after Anne's death, Henry proposed to Jane, and within 11 days they were married. By early June, she was officially declared queen. Jane achieved what Henry's previous wives could not. She gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Edward, on October 12, 1537. After nearly 3 decades on the throne, Henry finally had his long-awaited male heir, but his joy was short-lived. Jane Seymour died less than 2 weeks after giving birth due to postnatal complications. Henry was devastated. He would later declare Jane his true wife, and she became the only one of his queens to be buried beside him. Yet even with a male heir, Henry was not satisfied. In an era when childhood mortality was common, one son was not enough to secure the Tudor succession. Henry's advisors encouraged him to pursue a strategic alliance with Germany, then the leading Protestant power in Europe. Following the counsel of his chief minister, Thomas Cromwell, Henry agreed to marry Anne of Cleves, the daughter of a powerful German duke. He had never met her in person, but had been shown a flattering portrait. Pleased with what he saw, Henry agreed to marry her, but reality fell far short of expectation. When Anne arrived in England in the winter of 1539, Henry was immediately disappointed. He claimed she looked nothing like her portrait and was repulsed by her appearance. Despite his protests, the marriage went ahead in January 1540, but it was never consummated, and Anne was never crowned queen. To her credit, Anne handled the situation with remarkable grace. She accepted an annulment without resistance, and in return received a generous settlement, including estates, a royal household, and the honorary title of the king's sister. Of all Henry's wives, Anne of Cleves ultimately fared the best. She lived a long, comfortable life and even witnessed the coronation of Queen Mary I, the daughter of Henry and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Just 3 weeks after ending his marriage to Anne of Cleves, Henry took a new bride, his 5th wife, Catherine Howard, the young and vivacious daughter of Lord Edmund Howard. Catherine was only about 19 years old when she became queen. Henry, by contrast, was in his late 40s, severely overweight, suffering from chronic health problems and increasingly irritable in temperament. In the spring of 1541, the king fell seriously ill with a fever, and Catherine was sent away from court. While he recovered, she made a reckless and deadly mistake. She began a secret relationship with one of Henry's close companions. It was a fatal mistake. Just 17 months into their marriage, Catherine's affair was uncovered. She was arrested and charged with adultery, a treasonous offence for a queen. Henry was furious. He placed her under house arrest, dismissed her household staff, and seized her possessions. On a cold February morning in 1542, Catherine was taken by barge along the river to the Tower of London, where she was executed. Her time as queen had lasted less than a year and a half. After the heartbreak and humiliation of his 5th marriage, Henry married for the 6th and final time in 1543. This time, he chose more carefully. Catherine Parr, a twice-widowed woman of 31 known for her intelligence, maturity and diplomacy, became his new bride. Catherine proved to be a wise and steady partner, exactly what Henry needed in his final years. She nursed him through his declining health, formed strong bonds with his children, and actively engaged in the theological debates that shaped the Tudor court. Her reformist views nearly led to charges of heresy, but with careful diplomacy and a bit of luck, Catherine managed to survive both the accusations and ultimately the king himself. In the winter of 1546, Henry's health took its final downward turn, ravaged by obesity, infected leg wounds, and years of excess. He died in the early hours of January 28, 1547 at Whitehall Palace. The story of Henry VIII and his 6 wives is one of the most iconic and dramatic sagas in English history, and perhaps the greatest irony of all is this. Though Henry moved heaven and earth in pursuit of a son to secure his legacy, it was his daughter Elizabeth I, the child of Anne Boleyn, who would rise to become one of the most powerful and celebrated monarchs England has ever known.